Hey everyone, it's Nicholas Pythagoras here, back with another video. I got a short video for you guys today, but it's going to be a good one. And so basically, what I want to do today is discuss the phenomenology of Western music, particularly between, I would say, the years 1600s to the present day, and just give like a brief overview of my perception of how uh, the development of Western music happened and how it kind of led like a sort of narrative, a linear narrative, um, to how it went to the present day today. And so basically, jumping straight into it, we see this birth and going through Spengler's model. Um, the Western civilization happened between 1000 and 2000. Pretty much, each civilization is about 1,000 years. The Western civilization is 1000 to roughly 2000, and we can see that here. Um, and the art that the West associates itself with the most is music. And so that's why I want to jump right into it. But, anyways, okay. So we want to start with the um, greatest composers that happened in the 1600s. And again, the beginning of this, and which is Bach and Vivaldi, particularly, most notably, Bach and Vivaldi. As we see here, music was an outward, it began as an outward expression to God. There was a quote by Bach that said that every piece of music or that like every art form should be as a like dedicated to God, pretty much, you know. And Vivaldi and Bach were very Catholic. They were very devoted to the church. Bach even wrote church music, a lot of music. So as we see here, there was this sort of desire to create music as a way to, as like in devotion to a god. And not only this, but the music, not only the intention of the music was to be a sacrifice for the divine, but the music itself, the composition, actually was polyphonic. And this is going to get a little bit musical because I'm a very musical person here. Or rather, yeah, technically musical, because what that means pretty much, polyphony or a polyphonic piece of music, poly meaning multiple, and phonic meaning sounds. So there's multiple lines, multiple independent lines that happen in Bach's music. If you look at the fugue, I always love listening to Little Fugue in G minor. And if you look at these like huge pipe organs that are in the like giant cathedrals, it's very polyphonic. It resonates so well, and um, again, these are multiple independent lines, independent in harmony and independent in rhythm. So again, you have like in one piece of music, multiple lines. And then in the 1700s, you have a little less of this transcendental quality and it shifts more to immanency because the big composers in the 1700s were Mozart is the first one that comes to mind. And I believe you also have Haydn. I believe so. And so you have these 1700s classical composers instead of the Baroque Renaissance composers. But yeah, 1700s, the pieces and the styles of this music, the motives, the intentions for this music was to please the aristocracy. It was written for the kings, it was written for the queens, it was really written for the noblemen. So no longer, and don't get me wrong, Mozart was Catholic as well, but I don't think that he was as his motive for composing the music was not to appease to God, but more so to appease to the the monarchy. Um, and so you have this level down, this step down from the transcendental, which is God, to an immanent sort of thing, which is human, which is the monarch. Step forward, and it's no longer, the music is no longer polyphonic, but you have a sort of like it's more of a monophonic, where it's no longer multiple independent lines, but more of a structured sort of one line over an accompaniment. Um, even in orchestral, because you have a backing sort of section, and then the melody that hovers above that. So it's monophonic. And the 1800s, this was a very different time period for multiple reasons. Because when we call this the Romantic period, roughly between the years 1800s to early 20th century, roughly like 1920s, depending on certain areas. But and the most notable composers that happened as a result of during this time period were Beethoven, Wagner, Debussy, Tchaikovsky. There's so many Paganini. There's so many Brahms even. Um, there's just so and Chopin. There's so many composers who were alive during this time period that particularly like I really enjoy listening to this. But lately, for me, it's the Baroque and Renaissance music that hits me the most. But the causes of the difference, the causes for the differences in romantic music was mainly one of them was economical because the masses started getting more. There was an emergence of the middle class, which started making music more accessible. And so you had this bigger orchestra. You had a bigger development of the brass section, like more metallic sort of instruments as opposed to just woodwinds. So you had this rise in economic prosperity that happened, which allowed access to music. Um, but now music sort of became the main metaphysical narrative is that music became a sort of not I don't want to say a release, but it started focusing on the human emotional aspect. Feelings started to get involved in music. So you have this deep array, a deep expression of different feelings in music, and you can really hear this in Chopin, in Beethoven, in Dvorak. Um, these different sentiments that you can really notice when you listen to a piece of music. And this is a little bit more nihilistic because now it's not just for the monarchs, but that we had for the 1700s, but now it's music that's composed more so for the masses to appease to the intention is to appease to feelings and sentiments. Moving on to the 20th century, this is and again, it would be monophonic music for the Romantic period. But moving on to the 20th century, we have a huge shift, probably one of the greatest shifts in Western music, which is the invention of jazz. Now, this is really interesting because ideologically speaking, if we're just looking at the ideologies of the music and what they convey through their music, classical music is about discipline. It's about doing the classical way, the proper way. It's very it's on a method. It's very what's the word I'm looking for? Methodological. There's a methodology to it. There's discipline. There's form. There's structure. Things have to be because they are. When we invent jazz, when jazz comes about in the 20th century, we have this shift to improvisation that it's no longer let's play the piece as it was written. It's more let's improvise it. Let's create our own piece. And if we really express this as a way of truth, uh, we no longer we no longer see truth as like a structured thing that has always been, and therefore like we need to play as it's composed, live as it is written. But now with the introduction of jazz, we have our own sound, our own music, our own truths, and our own things sound good because it is subjective to other people. And what one person finds good might not be what another person finds good. So, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, sort of thing. Now we have this idea of subjectivism through jazz and all subsequent forms. Um, and again, that big thing, the revolutionary idea was that now beauty and truth and music is subjective to the listener and to the individual. We're breaking from tradition into the realm of improvisation. And then what happens after jazz is the birth of rock and roll. And this, it's so painful because I love rock and roll, and I still love rock and roll, and everything subsequent after that. But man, the 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 ideology behind rock and roll is revolution, is rebellion. You feel it. You feel the attitude in rock and roll. It's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. When people are super, they grow out their long hair. They they're just rebellious. Teenage angst. And it's a very liberal ideology. And you can feel the attitude. Like there's attitude there. There's just dirt. It's gritty. But anyways, going back to the ideology of it, now we have the introduction of the electric guitar. And the electric guitar was actually in jazz, um, but it didn't have prominence until rock and roll, which, the guitar is like a symbolic figure for rock and roll. Everyone wanted to pick up the guitar. Everyone wanted to be in a hair metal band or wanted to be in that sort of life. But why the invention of the electric guitar was so important was because that was the first time when we started getting electronified, the introduction of electronics into music. Before this, uh, the acoustics of the sound was very natural. It was very organic. The pipe organ, you have the piano, you have the trombones, you have the brass section, you have the woodwinds. But now you have an electric guitar. That's interesting. Now we have this tendency, this tendency towards an electronified sound, albeit a distorted tone, even a clean tone. Um, but yeah, now we have the revolutionary ideology of rock and roll. And rock and roll pretty much happened between, let's see, there was 1950s, the 60s, the 70s, 80s. I would say early 90s. It was really 1955 to like early 1990s. And after that, after rock and roll, and we really, I want to tie back to, if this were like an individual, everything, in my opinion, everything that happens in a society, narratively, ideologically speaking, can be tied back to an individual. Um, or rather, okay, that was a bad way of explaining it. That everything that happens in a society can also be replicated in an individual, and that's because we have a shared human element. So what I mean by this is, when we had the Baroque period, we had, let's say, we had an individual who started out and he was devoting his life to God. And then he let go of that and he wanted to find meaning in the world. And so that's why he started composing music for the monarchs. And even less than that, he wanted to start composing music to satisfy his own feelings, his own sensations, his own sentiments, which was the Romantic period. And then he gave up on that. And again, this is more of a degradation sort of thing. And he says, listen, I'm tired of living in accordance to a truth. I will create my own truth, and I'll improvise, I'll create jazz. And so then after that, he says, okay, well, no matter, it's no longer truth, but now I'm going to rebel against all prior forms of things, because rock and roll is revolution, rock and roll is rebellion. So he's going to revolt against the truth. He's going to revolt against his own morality. Now, what happens when an individual revolts against morality? Well, first of all, they become insanely nihilistic. And when you're already dying, the only, well, there's two solutions. One of them is good, one of them is bad. One of them is suicide. And I was going to say, the other one is life. You can choose to live. Um, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's always an individual that you can tie back to. Again, there's always an individual you can tie back to that symbolizes the aggregate, the macro. As I said, Bach, Vivaldi in the Baroque period, Mozart, Haydn in the classical period, Beethoven, Chopin, Brahms in the Romantic period. jazz, you have John Coltrane, you have Miles Davis, you have so many people. And then in rock and roll, you have Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, Carlos Santana. You have all the hair metal bands, Eddie Van Halen, Jimi Hendrix, people with the long hair. And then when we get from um, the end of the rock and roll period, we get into grunge. And so the reason why I bring up suicide is because Kurt Cobain. When a person rebels, or when a society rebels against the truth, and they become nihilistic, and one of the solutions is suicide. And so that's why I'm saying that Kurt Cobain symbolically can be used to symbolize that sort of narrative. You rebel against the truth, you rebel in rock and roll, and then we get grunge, which is a sort of, it's very, you can just feel the depression in the music when you listen to Nirvana, Alice in Chains. Well, particularly Nirvana, but there's also Alice in Chains, there's Pearl Jam, Soundgarden. The music is very uh, esque of '90s nihilism, and so that's why I say, Kurt Cobain, suicide, it fits narratively. If you look at it, it just fits. He's symbolically the individual that would represent that era, the grunge era of music, which was pretty much, I would say, 1990 to maybe 1993, 1995. It really was short term. And then you have this, now that music is pretty much dead. You have this sort of pop music sort of thing. Well, technically, it's all pop music, but a more electronified uh, part of music. And the reason why I bring it up is because, remember, in rock and roll, the popularity of electronic instruments was really just the electric guitar, and then electric bass that happened as a result of that. Now it is, we live in this day and age of electronic dance music, of pop. Think of like Taylor Swift, Katy Perry, Britney Spears, even like people like Ed Sheeran, Bruno Mars, like these pop artists who utilize electronic dance music, who utilize the an electronified sort of form, and it becomes so monotonous. Again, remember, this is it has this very similar chord progression. I think one of the chord progressions is like let's see, 1 6 4 5 1, like 1 6 4 5 1. I think that sounds right. Or it's the same chord progression that you see in "Don't Stop Believing" and "More Than a Feeling," that sort of thing. And again, this pop chord progression, and there's so many videos. I think, like, there's so many videos about all the songs that use literally the same chord progression because it sounds good, and it's dead. It really sounds dead, but that's symbolically what the masses listen to nowadays. They no longer listen to classical music. They no longer listen to polyphonic music. One, because they don't understand it symbolically. They wouldn't be able to know how to listen to it because the music is so alive. If you listen to things in the Baroque period, the music is so alive. It's so, again, it's polyphonic. And we listen to a more monophonic, basic chord progression. And now, and this EDM stuff, but going back on topic, I would say the EDM stuff lasted from, well, we saw the introduction of it technically like in the 80s. But really, the pop, when it became popular, it was like 90s to the present day. But I would even go a step further and say there's this new generation of music that we're listening to now. And I was watching a Rick Beato video, and he's a very brilliant person. Um, he pointed out, and this confirmed one of my suspicions, that this new generation of music no longer has the structure of a song. It's no longer an intro, verse, chorus, maybe a bridge, outro, chorus. It's lacking a structure of a song. It's more of a feeling. It's just a vibe. It's just a vibe. It's more of a sensation. And this is really important because no longer do um, do songs have structure, but symbolically, if we look at that symbolically, how it is a sign of an internalized ideology in the masses, look at how far we've come. Polyphonic music to monophonic music to even jazz had different sections. You know, they had an A section, A B, A C, A C. You know, they had different sections, and these were long songs. Same things with symphonies. Now a song is barely 4 minutes long, and now even a song isn't even a song. It's just a vibe. It's just a rhythm. It's just a beat. No longer do songs have structure. No longer a it's just a vibe. And I'm gonna end it there. That I at the end I was pretty much beating a dead horse. I think you guys understand the idea, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If anyone listens to this and everyone like, do you guys share the same ideas or thoughts that I do when you notice when you notice what I do, or when you hear my explanation as to how I perceive this ideological narrative of the degradation of Western civilization. Technically, if we're gonna do a subject of this, it's the phenomenology of music. Um, I would think. I would think. Um, but yeah, like let me know what you guys think. And this topic really interests me because I'm a musician myself. I'm also a phenomenologist. Again, learning it. I'm a student of phenomenology. I'm studying it. I'm learning it. I'm thinking about it constantly, and it's very fascinating. And I do want to get the word out there. That so hopefully people may see the truth, and that the truth may set them free. But yeah, I'm gonna end the video right here. Take care, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment, like the video, share the video, subscribe if you want, and have a great day, guys.